What's up, guys? WhoNeedsMeta here with Weevil Underwood, who
How's it
made
going, guys?
who made top 12, I guess, at what was it, Deck Devastators,
Deck Devastators 1, yeah, hosted by Carpath on Edison format.
and with insect mid-range insect control, I guess, is what we're kind of calling the deck. We're doing this deck profile virtually because, believe it or not, we didn't want to spend money on this.
Yeah, I picked this deck either planning to blow out or go big with it, and I didn't own any of the cards for it. Not a single monster. I think I own one Man-Eater Bug, actually.
Yeah, for when we play like critter format.
Yeah.
But that's kind of it. I own like solidarities. I own the trap land except for like lair wire. But we'll get kind of into the list here. So you want to kind of start us off with kind of so we have like what 8 battle recruiters?
Yeah, so this, just before we get into it, this list went 4-2, tied for ninth place. The two losses I had were the second and third, or the third and fourth placements. So I feel like this did pretty well. Into the deck
Hold
itself,
on, real quick. This is actually not an insect mid range. It's other.
with the thinky emoji.
Yeah, because Jazz was a little confused at what he was looking at, and to
I
his
don't blame
credit,
them.
understandable.
So this deck is entirely about grinding your opponent until you can just snowball advantage with the continuous spells. But to
And
help you
and not
grind,
Doom Dozer.
and no Doom Dozer, and I can get into that. But you have, I guess, 6 battle recruiters with an additional 2 worse Sangans in the deck with Gokipon. I just to address why these are even here, I kind of need to skip ahead to the continuous spells. So hover over Verdant Sanctuary.
There you go.
So when a face-up insect monster is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the grave, its controller can add an insect with the same level from their deck to their hand. This card can trigger multiple times on the same destruction. If your opponent TTs your board of 5 insects, you can search 5. You can. It's not once per turn. If you have 2 copies up, you search 1 per each. It's very abusable resource generation if you can set it up. So the main play lines in this deck revolve around having that card on the field and protecting it, and then ramming your recruiters into your opponent's monsters to float and add cards to your hand at the same time. If you have Verdant Sanctuary, if you want Kamakuri, because it's a level 4, and you use Howling to get into it. With Kamakiri, you ram itself 3 times optimally to get all 3 out of the deck, and on B-list Soldier, while you're ramming, you'll add Aztecapede. Mouse over to those guys. You'll add at least 2. Normally you just want to add 3, but if you haven't normal summoned that turn, you can also add like Beetle or Cross-Sword, depending on your matchups here. But the
So
ideal
you'll
combo
ram
is,
these with this, search this because it's level 4.
yeah, you'll search a few of those, and on B-list Soldier, main phase 2, you'll banish one of the Kamakiris for Aztecapede, and then draw 2 with B-list, hopefully into some of your back row because you've thinned your deck by like 6 monsters at that point. That's the bread and butter optimal combo for this deck, is to just thin your deck a bunch, draw into your real back row, control the game from there, draw into a solidarity, draw into 2 solidarities.
And then these guys become big.
Yeah, then that
So
becomes,
it's like because you have 3 of these in your hand. If you ram all 3 of these,
yes,
you essentially have 2 guys on board, draw 2 cards, and if you draw into a solidarity, you still have like another guy in graveyard. If you have either one of the other flaming count or like a howling insect or something, and then these guys are 2,700, and you have 2 2,700 beat sticks on board.
and that's only with 1 solidarity. So there's a lot of potential to just draw through your cards in your deck if you're able to establish the Verdant combo. But big flaw of the deck is it's a continuous spell. You have no real way to search it. So the floaters are also there just to keep you alive until you can see your real threatening cards. Just to go over the other monsters that we haven't talked about yet, the Quacky Marrow Beetles are there as pre against the light and the dark decks that are popular. I was really hoping to run into more Vayu. I didn't. I ran into Lightsworn, but the card didn't really matter. Those were both of my losses were Lightsworns. But it's good. It's a 1900 beater. It is valuable against some decks, but half the time it's just a vanilla.
Excuse me, sir. This is a 2,700 beater.
Optimally, yes. Cross-Sword Beetle is there just as another level 4 target, and the piercing is relevant on occasion. If you'll skip ahead to the side deck, you'll notice an extra copy of each of those. Depending on the matchup, I swapped either the cross-sword out for the third Kawaki Marrow Beetle, or I swapped one of the Kawakis out for cross-sword. If I was playing like Hero Beat or Black Wings that would play something big, I'd go for the Kawaki Marrows. If I was playing like Quick Draw, I would tag in the cross-swords. That was the thought behind that. The spider's there just because you have a bunch of recruiters. You're almost always going to have an insect engraved to recur back. You have Book of Moons. You have Solidarity, so it's big. Just general value. Arsenal Bug is there as another level 3 to search with Verdant Sanctuary if you're running your Howlings.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, 2k. It's kind of threatening if you can stick it with another insect, especially under Solidarity. Maneater Bug is there for a similar region. It's another level 2 to search off of Gokipon with Verdant up. But it's amusingly actually not that bad. I ran the second one in the sideboard to tag out with a Gokipon if I ran into something like Glad Beasts and didn't want my recruiters to just be food.
Okay, that makes sense.
Plague is there for
you can side in all 3 of these for Gladiator Beasts. If you're being honest, big monsters, they don't like those.
Yeah, I didn't have that matchup, but it's a viable thought. Plague is there for the busted interaction with Aztekipede and Underground Arachnid.
Okay, so give me that interaction here. Because I know Underground Arachnid is like a change of heart.
Yeah, well, no, it's a relinquished, basically.
Oh, okay, it's relinquished, okay.
But it also has like the ancient gear. Your opponent can't activate spell traps when it attacks.
I think all of the quote-unquote dark synchro monsters or whatever, like getting like Frozen Fitzgerald and stuff, they all have that effect.
Yeah. So it's you have to hard draw the Plague, but essentially if you're able to resolve your Kamikiri Verdant loop, or even if you're not and you just have like an Aztekipede and Plague in hand, you can just make Arachnid for free. Steal something, and then you have Plague engrave, and Plague is nice in that it can remove itself.
So it doesn't interfere with Solidarity.
Yeah, so it works well in this deck with all your level 4s to just make Arachnid and steal games. I believe 2 or 3 of my matches I made Underground Arachnid in. It always felt great. It's just a solid card, and it works the same as Relinquished or Plasma, where if you try to interrupt it while you're stealing something, the monster it's targeting still just gets sent to the graveyard. So has a lot of strengths, including Plague as a 1-of really isn't that difficult either. So it's just solid cards doing solid things. I don't really need to talk more about Verdant Sanctuary. Amazing. Solidarity, great. Book of Moon there, both for spider value, or to book your opponent's big monsters, to book your own monsters if they're being deprisoned, which I did quite a lot, or brain controlled. Did that like twice during the tournament.
Because if you're trying to ram these guys and they deprison you, the loop is over, and that's...
Deprison is one of the biggest fears of you trying to get your value chain going. So yeah, it's good to hold on to one for that. I ran Trunade instead of Heavy because I ideally have like 3 to 4 continuouses up at the same time, whether or not that's the spells or the traps. MST goes good. Dark Bribe in there to preserve the back row against Heavy or Trunade or anything else like that.
Because you can't play Starlight because it interferes with Solidarity.
Right. Like I guess you could and just not summon the Stardust.
That just feels like neg value.
But there are times where you want to preserve even one card, and Dark Bribe felt like the right card for the job.
Like if they're just trying to like MST or Verdant Sanctuary or something like that.
Yeah, like that card is the game. You need to keep it. So Dark Bribe was what I wanted for it. Lairwire, like the Infernity Break before Infernity Break. It's just really solid chainable removal that has little investment other than running the bad archetype that is Insects. Was really clutch whenever I saw it. If you pointed out earlier, why no Doomdozer? It's because between the 2 Lairwires and the 3 Aztekipedes, I was finding in solitaire mode with this deck that Doomdozer was kind of dead in hand a lot of the time. So I originally had like 2 in my draft list, then I dropped it down to 1, and eventually I just opted to cut it for consistency, and I think that was absolutely correct.
Okay.
If you wanted to maximize Lairwire, you probably could, but I wanted other back row in the deck at the point.
Like this card.
Yeah. So as I said,
which I just hovered over B list. This is like they banish for cost or tributes for cost.
It's tributes for cost. So skill drain is there because most of your monsters are vanillas on the field anyway. So including that to blank most of the format and not hurt yourself at all is fantastic. Nothing more to say than that. It was great in all my matchups where I saw it. It was good against Quick Draw. It was good against Fairies. It was good against. It was not good against Hero Beat, but theirs wasn't good against me either, so it was kind of even. Return, you have 5 cards that say Banish.
And they're all going to banish, and they're easily accessible.
Yeah. So Return was an easy inclusion. I pushed for game with it several times. Solid card. Deck facilitates it well.
3 of these guys here.
Yeah, the rest is good. I opted for D-Prisons instead of Bottomlesses in the main, because half the time you want your opponent to stick a monster so you can ram it, and afterwards you want to be able to answer whatever they have. So with that mindset, I put in D-Prisons. It worked out well. D-Prison was great.
How many of your wins were your opponent having no idea what your cards did?
That worked for like the game 1 and most of my matches until people started like flocking the spectator chat. By game 2, it's pretty easy to catch on to what this deck is doing. You're just trying to ram recruiters. People caught on to that pretty quick. So it's not. I didn't bamboozle people the whole match. I did definitely catch my first maybe 2 opponents completely off guard with it, though. I think.
Makes sense.
Yeah, TT Solemn, they're fine. TT, you have to be careful with. If your opponent,
these guys.
Yeah, it's fine to TT your own board if you have Verdant up and TT is Chainlink 1, but Verdant is a win you can card. So if you're anything above Chainlink 1, you're not going to want to nuke your own board.
All right. Moving on to the sideboard really quickly. Which of these 2 cards do you wish were Light Imprisoning Mirror?
See, that was to me, Skill Drain does what Light Imprisoning does better.
Okay.
There's nothing that really activates in the grave that's a light that really matters this format. So Skill Drain is basically
except for I guess like Shining Angel and stuff like that.
Yeah. But I wasn't really worried about what they could bring out with Shining Angel. I was more worried about stopping the DD Warrior ladies anyways. So rather than including another card in my side that is very narrow, Skill Drain already answers most of what I'm afraid of with that deck, with like fairies in mind, or Light Sworns. So I just opted to not include it. Do I regret it now because I lost to Light Sworns twice? Maybe. I mean, against them I sided in the rivalries in the oppressions, and that still didn't end up mattering.
Yeah, I feel like Oppression isn't as good against that matchup because they have some list side breaker, but they have Celestia, Raiko, Lila, and then the heavy MST. They just have so many outs to Oppression.
I saw Skill Drain against them a lot, but they almost always had the MST or the heavy for it. So I just got kind of dogged by that matchup. But in theory, I mean, this deck is mono archetype. So it was real easy to side cards like Rivalry. Even with the nerf, a lot of decks that I faced weren't mono type. So it was valuable. It never really resolved, though. I think they always had the MST or something for it, or the Dust Tornado. But other than that, Dust Tornadoes were there for things like Flat Beasts with D-Fissure, or Gravekeepers with Necro Valley. That card would really mess this deck up too.
That's fair. I feel like maybe siding a lot of the continuous traps in a deck that already has cards that your opponent really wants to key in on with Dust Tornadoes and MSTs could be good and bad at the same time. It's just like because they always are going to have an out for your out, but they're going to be using it on Rivalry as opposed to a card like Verdant. So
right, yeah, it's a balance of threat, and just per the nature of that, you're super vulnerable to Heavy Storm. So be mindful of that, but they're not always going to have it. That's what it comes down to, right?
Would you have cited more bribes instead of the Dust Tornadoes? Do you wish that was a thing or no?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Just because I really was worried about running into D-Fissure or Macro or Necro Valley or Zombie World. So I needed things that could pop face-ups that were already there.
Understandable. What machine stuff were you afraid of with the system downs?
It was really just any of the Machina strategies. Machina Fortress isn't like impossible for this deck to deal with, but it's still annoying. You can easily get monsters that are bigger than it, but they still trade pretty favorably against you. And Fortress can just pop Verdant. It doesn't have to pop a monster, right?
Yeah.
So I was worried about things like that with it. Didn't end up mattering, but you can't side Cyber Dragons with this deck with Solidarity.
Yeah.
So
that's why I have the triple underground.
I think I was actually a little also worried about the ancient gear strat. Not like I was expecting it to be rampant, um, but ancient gear beast definitely fucks this deck.
Okay.
Um, and without two solidarities, the 3K beaters are actually a bit of a struggle without your cards like Layer Wire and Book of Moon to help
Because
get over them.
you can't use these.
No, you can't. So it was it was boarded for that also.
Yeah. All right. So do you want to go through your matchups real quick?
Yeah, I can really quickly go through my matchup spread. So I stayed in winners until round 5. My first round was against Volcanic Quickdraw, which I 2-0'd. I next played against Fairies. That was a 2-1 game. That one got a bit grindy at the end. My third round was against another Volcanic Quickdraw player who smoke screened into almost full Volcanics. That was Tegalix list. That was pretty interesting. I was really worried about Scattershot there. Round 4, I played against Jinzo's Hero Beat. That was a very good example of how well this deck can do against other slow decks. Because you can grind until you get Verdant in a Recruiter, and if they can't respond to that, then you just rapidly outpace them, which is exactly what I ended up doing one of those games. We just kind of stalled for a while until I was able to accumulate a large hand. Round 5 and 6, the story of my life was I just got sacked by Lightsworns. I have not gone back and watched the replays to see if I could have played better, but I like charge, recharge, heavy storm, decree in the main. They seemingly both were just built to truck me. I couldn't get anything going against them, so they very handily defeated me. Let me see. I have some notes here on things that I might have changed going forward. Oh, and also, Recruiter decks, Volcanic Quickdraw is probably a bad matchup, but Verdant Sanctuary kind of flips it, because if they Blaze Accelerator your Recruiters or any other insect and you have that up, you're not immediately losing the game,
Makes
which is
sense.
kind of nice. So that card coming in clutch yet again. The side deck cards, if I was expecting more zombies, I would have included the Marionette Mite, which is a level, it's like the zombie and fiend version of like Puppet Plant, but it's an insect and it's a level 3.
Okay.
So I did opt to include that, but it's viable if you're expecting a lot of fiend and zombie decks. I did consider Needle Sealing as an option. That didn't end up mattering, but
You
that's a
love that
possible
card.
side deck card. I do like that card. Light Imprisoning Mirror is. I'm still kind of salty about Lightsworn, so I'm really considering Light Imprisoning in the side. That's not quite happening though. Main deck inclusions that I might add or change in the future. The ultimate insect, like level 3 and 5, are viable. The level 3 is a wind and it's under 1500. It can tag out into level 5, which like is a 2300 5-star beater that reduces your opponent's monster's attack by 500. So if you have a Kamakiri chain going and you don't want to end on B list, you can end on Ultimate Insect level 3. It can transform itself in your next standby phase. If they're attacking you, for example, that's a viable inclusion also. I might add another book. I could add another Spider. I did find that half the time I was able to get Verdant chains going with the recruiters that, after the Aztecapedes are out of your hand, you don't have a lot of good use out of your insects. They're just normal summons at that point. So you could include discard traps if you really wanted to. Sometimes they're just vanillas in your hand.
Are there any of these guys that you would say, hey, this card was bad. I don't really need it. Let's slim it down to 37 and play Upstart so we can draw Verdant more? Card like maybe cut this to 1, maybe cut Arsenal Bug or cut Spider or Cross Sword. I didn't know if that was ever an option for you to say like, hey, let's trim the fat, play Upstarts, and then because I lose if I don't draw Verdant.
I did have that thought. The thing about this deck is though you really do just want cards that do things because most of your monsters don't. Upstart can help you get to them, but it also and you're not milling either, so it's not like you're going to mill Upstart and it feels bad that way. It's possible. But at the same time, you do have a limited amount of gas with this deck, and I'm reluctant to give them 3,000 more life points.
Makes sense.
because really you're looking to put them on a clock. As soon as you're able to resolve Verdant Chain or something, load your hand up with Solidarity, Aztecus Beads. You have maybe 1 or 2 pushes before you just run out of gas. So it's all about timing. I don't know. It's viable. You could. If I was to do that, I might slim Gokipon down. I might take out a Koakimero Beetle. I don't think I'd touch the Spell Trap lineup, though. That felt really solid.
It makes sense. This looks really solid in terms of spells and traps, especially like card like Bribe is really cool. Skill drains in the main make a whole lot of sense. You just board them out in the bad matchup, but you kind of have to like attempt to high roll when you're playing Jank.
Right. The True Nade is necessary too, because half the time you're just after you get Aztec Beads to your hand, you want to push next turn, so you just True Nade everything back. So I don't think I'd change that much there, but Upstart's valid. It's valid.
Sounds good. All right, well, this was Cadigan's Weevil Underwood deck, Insect mid-range. Saw a lot of success. We're going to probably keep pushing a bunch of jank stuff going forward. We do appreciate the growth that the channel has seen recently, and we appreciate everyone watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more retro format content, and thanks for watching, guys.